going. Nick is also online. So cool, guys. So first of all, let me welcome everybody who's watching us. And yeah, this is actually our first ever Go reading talk. So we have this community going on for you, Max. It's called Go Reading, and it's a platform, or it's a Facebook group where we share our thoughts, articles we found really inspirational, stuff like that. And we thought it was a good idea to share our expertise, or at least get some expertise from outside of the community and have them join. So we thought it was a great idea to have Joël start the first session, because he's having this great educational course at Hyper Island. So yeah, I think it's the best way to start off. So for the viewers, we have on your right side we have Joël, and Joël is one of the members indeed of the Go Reading community. And on your left is Max Krombe, and he is the program director of Hyper Island. So yeah, I think it's about to kick off for the guys, and it's a Q&A session, so feel free to ask some questions. Joël and Max will try to answer them as correctly as possible. Enjoy.
Okay. To start off, thanks for having me, Davey. I invited Max to join this session because he knows a lot about Hyper Island, and especially the digital experience design course, and he can also share some knowledge and insight about the learning methods used by Hyper Island. So maybe it's a good to start introducing Hyper Island to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello everybody. So Hyper Island was founded 20 years ago. This is our 20th year actually. And if you don't know the story, it was created in southern Sweden, in a small town called Karlskrona, which is actually on a little island. And the founders bought an ex-prison there. So the original Hyper Island was in a prison on an island. And we still have that space. We don't use the prison itself anymore. We have a space nearby. But that is, that's kind of where it started. And the original concept was really around how do we create education? How do we create learning experiences that that meet the real world industry needs? So there was the founders saw that there was a real gap between what students were learning in education and what industry was asking for. And this was around the time where digital was just starting to become a thing. So a project they'd been working on at the time was around CD-ROMs, which gives you an idea of the kind of the technology we're talking about at that period of time. But the founders were quite visionary, I think, and they saw that digital was going to have a huge impact on the world and to disrupt a lot of things. And because of that disruption, it means that the old model of education, whereby somebody stands at the front and knows everything, and they tell all that knowledge to the people who are the students, and then they go on and use that knowledge in the future, that model wasn't really going to work anymore, because we didn't know what was going to happen in the future. We didn't know what was going to happen with new technologies and new ways of thinking and new ways of working. And so we wanted to create education which would allow people to be adaptable to that change, to understand it, to continue to work with it, and to really want to have that approach to learning for life, that you continually need to keep learning, because nothing stays the same. And the days are gone of people who know stuff. If the people who know things they might be fine today, but tomorrow those things might not be relevant anymore. But the people who can learn things and continue to develop and adapt, they're the ones who will continue to be relevant and continue to be useful in the world, I suppose. So that was 20 years ago. Since then, we've run many programs all over the world. It was only about 7 years ago that we actually existed outside of Stockholm and outside of Sweden. We expanded to Stockholm, which is where our biggest school is at the moment. But about 7 years ago, we kind of moved abroad, I suppose. And we've been in the UK for 5 years now, running 2 master's programs. One called Digital Media Management, which is our first program we had here, and one called Digital Experience Design. And for both of those programs, and for all of the work we do really at Hyper Island, it's about learning by doing. So we don't employ teachers here as such. My background is in education, but not as a teacher. I create learning experiences, I suppose, and they're the kind of people we look for in the company. So they're not necessarily experts in experience design or in digital media, but they are good at putting together learning journeys and thinking about what the flow of a particular project might be like. And then what we do is we bring in the industry to deliver all the content. So Joël will be able to tell you more about that, but the industry leaders who come in will deliver some content, they'll coach students and they'll support them through a particular project. And then lots and lots of other people will come in and deliver. It might be a talk, it might be a workshop, it might be some kind of Q&A or discussion session. But it's really about trying to get a whole variety of perspectives from the people who are using and working in this area day to day. Because it's so hard to be a teacher, a traditional kind of teacher or a lecturer, if you're not practicing. Because if you're not practicing your craft or your art, then you're becoming less and less relevant every day because things move on, things change. And we have quite a well-developed set of methodologies that sit underneath this. So our learning style is learning by doing. So rather than us giving lots of information to the students, it's much more about giving some bits of input and inspiration, and then the students trying things out and testing things and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't and adapting their style and approach. And we also focus a lot on how we work together. So not just about what's, not just about skills or tools or processes, but actually the how. How do you create an effective team? How do you use feedback and reflection to build that effective team? How do you collaborate with people who are both in the same room as you and across the world in different time zones? So really focusing on building that effective working structure. Because we see that collaboration is where great things happen, but collaboration is hard, it is quite difficult to do. Sometimes you click with certain people and sometimes you don't, but that shouldn't mean you're not able to work together successfully with them. So we really focus quite a lot on how to deliver effective working as a team. And what our industry kind of partners tell us is that some of the things they recognize most about Hyper Island students when they graduate, that they are able to fit into a whole range of different cultures, and they're able to really be very self-aware and very keen to take on feedback and to learn more as they grow and develop.
Yeah, I saw a question popping up. So this is a Q&A, so we see all the questions on the right side of our screen. So if you have questions, just drop them, and Max and I will answer them in the best way we can. So Robin, you had a question about how to test your prototypes in a qualitative way. So I think prototyping is not about the quality of the prototype itself, it's about testing your idea. So it's just doing. In my belief, because if we have a design challenge and we did some research and we immersed in the world of our target groups, then we come up with a lot of ideas and we have a lot of preconceptions, and the best way to test them is just to make a really simple but clear prototype to test with the user self. So the prototype can be made of paper, for example, or it can just be a screen dump of a really basic design. The more you prototype, the more the idea develops. So in the end, you have like a better prototype. But I think the learning for me as a student was to just prototype and do it, because quality can also, break your progression, because if you have the ambition to make a great prototype, then it maybe takes too long, because sometimes you need to speed up. Does that answer your question?
I think I'd add to that as well, that I think what we see a lot I talk about industry, I'm not even sure exactly what the industry is, because it used to be very focused on, I guess, communications, advertising, those kind of areas. But now it's so broad, it's so diverse that there is no kind of one industry. But what we see a lot in the professional working world is that people keep their ideas or hold on to their ideas for too long a period of time about getting them in front of people. And they go too much probably to a screen to start doing work rather than just using a pen and paper or pencil and paper. So trying to communicate ideas quickly to potential users or potential customers or whoever the kind of target group is. Trying to communicate those ideas quickly and simply rather than trying to make the idea perfect before showing it to people. It's that much more iterative approach and developing a prototype over many, many different rounds rather than kind of storing up all of that idea and knowledge and research and then trying to test it after that. So we really push here to get people out of the building, to get them away from a laptop, to try and get physical things in front of people for them to experience and understand, and to use that as part of the prototyping process.
Yeah, that's also a funny thing to tell, because when I started at Hype Island, I brought my laptop with me, but I think the first month I haven't used my laptop at all. It's just like our notebooks and maybe some sketchbooks, but the laptop is in the early stages not done. It's just about doodling, writing, and just get your thoughts on paper. So very old-fashioned, but it turned out to be for me very effective because it's you think more about stuff if you write things on paper rather than just designing with your mouse or a pen on a laptop.
I think it's also very difficult to do things on a screen because typically you've got so many pop-ups and notifications and distractions. So to just have a pen and a piece of paper, there's no real distractions. Then you're not going to get any notifications on your notepad when you're working.
Okay, so another question. Okay. Yeah, that's I guess what I said about having an idea of the quality of your prototype is just doing and get your idea out literally in the world and let people react on it. Okay, so feedback. Yeah, so the way we test our prototypes differs in many ways. Sometimes we just go to speak to people and show them our paper prototype or our screen, or sometimes we made also like a prototype on our iPad with an app called this prototype. I will send it to you later.
It's prototyping on paper.
Prototyping on paper. Yeah, and we just we just speak to people, and I think the most important thing is that they understand the concept. And I think it's really good if people don't understand everything, because then you discover blind spots, and with blind spots we can note those blind spots and iterate further on the idea and design. But prototyping, yeah, you can test it in many ways. What way do you prefer?
I think it really depends on the context. So a lot of the work we do around, I guess, prototyping or testing as Hyper Island is researching with our customers. So that's with the students on the long-term programs, and with our business clients on the kind of consultative side of the business that we have as well. So there's things like bringing a small group of students together in more of a focus group and asking more detailed questions and getting kind of ideas and opinions. But then, of course, there's other things like putting new stuff out on the web and seeing what the reaction is in terms of the traffic, in terms of the click-throughs, in terms of the conversions and those kind of data. So we use a variety of methods, I suppose, because for me it's really important to focus on the qualitative and the quantitative. Data gives you so much, but then you have to interpret that data and make it real, I suppose, turn it into something that makes sense rather than just looking at statistics all the time. So we try and focus a bit on both here, and it depends on the context of what we're doing. If I really want to know about how a particular project was, for example, what the experience was like, then I'll sit with a smaller group and discuss it and go into depth. If I want to have a sense of if we created a new course, would people be interested, then I can stick a page on the website and see what kind of clicks and information we get about it. So it's, yeah, I think it just depends on the context of what you're doing and all the parameters you have, such as your timescales, your budget, your access to potential stakeholders or customers or whoever you're trying to work with. So yeah, it really varies a lot.
Yeah. And speaking of context, Davey, I think the context of Hyper Island is key. Your question about what is that differentiates Hyper Island with your other experiences with design studios. In the foundation week, the first week we started here at Hyper Island. They told us this is your space. You can do with it what you want, and it's open 24 hours. The only rule was you cannot sleep here. That's right. Huh?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Pretty much. I think in my previous experiences, design studios in the Netherlands, for example, Total Identity and Fabric, are too clean. There isn't any work on the walls or post-its. It's always clean desk policy and not much. There's not much going on. Here at Hyper, it's at the moment one big mess. It's like a maze of post-its. I will show you guys later. And that also, triggers and sparks creativity, because if you see a lot of designers being busy with their challenge and you see them ideating and iterating, designing, then you also get like energy. There's some kind of energy over here that really, sparks my creative mind. So I think if I could compare my previous studio experience with Hyper Island, I would say that this is more like a living and breathing design and creativity hub, and that like Fabric and Total Identity were really like it was all about the business and structure, and there was not much work on the walls, unfortunately.
I think what I love and also challenges me about this space is that it's chaos a lot of the time. And what I love about that is every day I walk around and, like Joel said, there are post-its everywhere. There's work up on the walls. There's this trail of ideas flowing through the building. And I see groups of students stood up around boards doing ideation exercises, trying to refine their ideas, trying to kind of create new concepts or new ways of working, and also really focusing on how they're working together. That challenges me because it means this place isn't always as tidy as I would like it, because I'm probably a bit more OCD than some people. But that energy, that kind of that fire, I guess, that comes from that environment leads to some really inspirational work taking place, and that's great.
Okay, other questions?
There's some there. When you look at the future, what is becoming relevant in the design of your educational program? I'm not exactly sure what is meant by that question, but I can give a perspective as to how we create programs here. because everything we do is driven by industry people. So, for example, the course that Joëls on, the Digital Experience Design Masters, we started working on that about 3 years ago, a few months after I joined Hyper Island. And the way we did that was, first of all, we thought there was felt there was a space in the market for some kind of master's degree in user experience or experience design or something in that space. Certainly industry were talking about it and saying there was a skills gap and a skills need. And so what we did is bring together a panel of industry people to work on creating what might that program be. And that probably involved about 30 or so industry people over the course of about 6 months, coming together in different panels and different workshops to, first of all, help make sense of what UX or what experience design is, and then to gradually over time formulate, if we were going to refine that down into a master's program, what would be the different key kind of components to it and the skills that you'd want students to come out with, or the knowledge and experience you want them to come out with. So that was, I mean, it was a good year's process from start to finish, from having the initial idea to doing the research to bringing the panel together to actually writing the course and all the learning outcomes for it, and then getting it approved by a university partner, Teesside University. And then the way we keep them relevant is that after every course, I mean, during the course, it's all delivered by industry. So we're continually updating what the content is, even if we're not updating the learning outcomes underneath it. But then in between each course, we then bring together an industry panel, mainly of people who've been involved in the delivery of the course, and we look at the evaluation from the students, we look at the thoughts and opinions from the industry we've been in, and we iterate it for the next course. So we might tweak or change some of the project names or the focus of a project. We might think about bringing in a different kind of live brief during a particular project to make sure it focuses on a specific skill set. So it's really about constantly being connected to the industry. But I think because nearly all of our content is delivered by industry people, and because the course has been created by industry people, then that's just how we're set up to operate, really. And that should keep it relevant, rather than what many traditional universities do, which is update their course every 5 years with a review process. And sometimes that, not a lot happens in that review process. So we want to continually iterate with every course. And during the course as well, we design quite live. So we respond to student feedback in the earlier projects they do to adapt to what the later projects look like. And it's that process that for me makes it continue to stay relevant.
Yeah, we can add something to that. After every module, we get a feedback form from Max, and we can give feedback to our industry leaders, to everyone who was involved as expert in that particular module. And it gives me also, I think that's a really nice way to interact also with the students, because it gives also a sense of control and a sense of we are also building the future in a way of this course, because our feedback is taken in consideration. That's one thing we know, and that's really nice to know, because we are a bit of a family, and we are really also focused on building this course in general, and creating something amazing for future students. I saw a few new questions popping up as well. First one, Guus. Yes, I think it's a difficult question. I say yes, a mechanic shop is a nice metaphor for a good service design studio, but it also depends on the kind of designer you are, because, for example, if you want to work for a company like IDEO, they are all like the mechanic shops. But if you work for like an identity and branding firm as Total Identity, then the distraction, what Luc also says, is something to reduce. So then they have less stuff on the wall or in the space. the most important part for me to put your work on the walls is to inspire your fellow designers, because it always triggers. I'm looking now at the wall full of post-its, and I don't know what's on those post-its specifically, but it triggers me to work more. It's just something with this paper, but it's also like, your style. If you are a person who likes to have clean desks and clean spaces, then you won't like Hyper Island at all, I guess.
Well, I think it depends how you work. So, like Joel said earlier, the space here we give to the students, and it's up to them to run the space. So if there's a consensus that they want to have a cleaner space or a clearer policy or whatever it is, then that's up to them to organise themselves. If they want it to be busy and have lots going on and vibrant, then that's up to them as well. And that's part of the learning experience, really, that the students come here as individuals, but within the first week we've connected them as one kind of unit, as one crew, as we call it, or one. It feels a bit like one company. So it's really up to that company to work out how do they want this space to operate and to work, and for us to support them in that journey. And I think going back to the idea of this kind of mechanic shop, I think, yes, you can have lots of tools and things like that over the place, but it depends on what you're going to do with them. So there's no point having lots of equipment if you don't know how to use it, and it's not kind of relevant, I suppose, to what you're doing. And a lot of what we do here is not about the technical side of anything, really. So it's not about the kind of, I guess, building physical prototypes using electronics and things like that. We do have makey-makeys and Arduinos and other kits like that to experiment with. But the focus is really more on the understanding and the approach to technology and things related to it, as opposed to necessarily soldering and creating circuit boards and things like that. But that said, if students want to do that, we do have some kit that allows them to do that. So it's really up to them to decide what it is that they want to learn from being here, what are their goals and their ambitions, and how do they apply that and take that from the experience.
Yeah, I think that the space just need to facilitate the creative process. So having the tools in your space is nice, but what Max said, it isn't a good idea to have too much tools if you never use them. So
we've got another question in. How do you see the role of mentors in lifelong learning, and do you facilitate that maybe with a hyper network? Well, I can give a perspective, and then I'm sure you can give a perspective on that as well. I mean, absolutely. I think mentors, and I mean, not even necessarily mentors, but just inspirational people being around you, being people that you talk to or read stuff from or engage with in social media or wherever it might be. I think it's really important to have those people around you to help inspire you, to help you think about new ways of doing things or different approaches. And I'd say the way we facilitate that is that all of the course is delivered by these people. So I don't know what the exact number, but I imagine by the time Joël leaves Manchester or leaves the talk part of the course in a few months' time, he will probably have met, I don't know, 50, 60 maybe industry people who've been in over the 6 months he's been here. And it's very much up to, we say it's up to him and the other students to make those people part of their network, if that's what they want to do. So to follow up with them individually, to talk to them, to use them as a support to help them develop their career or their way of thinking or the opportunity they want to go into next. So I think that's an instant kind of group of people who can be those kind of mentor roles. And in terms of a hyper network, there's I think we have something like 5,000 student alumni around the world now. And it's really interesting to see that once people have been on a Hyper Island program, they have that instant connection with each other because they've been through some very similar experiences. So I don't know of anyone who has tried to communicate with another Hyper Island student from a different course and not had a good experience, because generally they're very open to talking, to helping, to sharing, to doing whatever they can to have a good relationship with that person.
You have a website called worldofhypers.com, there you can see like where all the hyper students are working now, and it's nice to see how they are spread across the globe. I also contacted a few hyper students from Apple and from IBM, and those guys from Apple were replying on my request because they still read their Hyper Island email, and that's, you know, my way to to connect with them without using their Apple account, and yeah, ending up in their spam box. So that's really nice that you have like a sense of network and family, and that you all experience the same learning experience. To return on the mentor part, I think mentoring is crucial in this thought part, and also in our industry research project module, because for me a master is like finding my expertise, my angle for the next 5 to 10 years at least. And I have now 3 mentors who support me on the journey in finding a topic and defining a bit what my role will be as designer. And I think in general it's really important as creative to just contact the people that inspire you and have a chat or a coffee. You will be surprised how open people are to just have a talk with you about future, about creativity and personal development. So I would trigger you to do that.
Mm. But and I'd say for us it's really important that students do that themselves. So there's many other educational places where you might get matched with a mentor or matched with somebody, and we purposefully don't do that here because it's almost impossible for me to find a particular individual that will really suit what Joël's looking for and be able to have a good spark and good connection. So people need to do that themselves. And one of the questions we get asked a lot is, or one of the expectations we have from a lot of students at the start is that we give them a network. And I always say we can't give you a network because my network's my network and your network's your network and everyone's, it's their own network. What we can do is put lots of interesting people in front of you, and then if you find that connection with them and you want to build that relation with them a bit more, then it's up to you to create that opportunity, because that will make it much more powerful and purposeful than me going out and finding people and matching them to each individual student, whether they're a good fit or not.
I see 2 new questions.
Although, yeah, the one at the top's a great question.
Yeah.
Cultural differences and experience among the international students.
Nice
workplace. Yeah, so my perspective, to give you a context, at the moment we have 60 students here, and I think they're from 25 different nationalities. I don't know how many languages are spoken, but lots. And not just the cultural differences, but I think also differences in where they've come from. So in terms of their age, it probably ranges from early 20s to in their 40s at the moment. In terms of what they've been working in. So some are very established in their particular career paths, others are fairly new to the industry, some have come from more of a design background, others from psychology, others from research or from project management, or more technical backgrounds. So there's a real diversity of skills and experiences and culture and beliefs that come with that. And what I would say is that makes for a really rich learning environment. It doesn't necessarily make it easy because you have lots of different points of view and lots of different opinions and lots of different ways and styles of working. But in this world, I think we're seeing, and certainly I think about who I work with in Hyper Island, there's people from all over the world in different time zones with different approaches, with different cultures and backgrounds, and that's kind of the world we live and work in. So to only work with people or to only study with people who are like you, who think like you, who come from a similar background, then I don't think you're going to create great stuff, and you're probably not going to have a very rich learning experience. It's that diversity that leads to new ideas and new opportunities and new ways of thinking. And it's also a challenge because you've got to learn how to work with each other effectively, which is why we focus so much on that part as well, around the how.
Yeah. Robin, I had so many difficulties the first weeks with the cultural differences. We are very direct as Dutch people, and that's something that really caused some problems in my team, because people are not used to the directiveness that we have in our feedback. So, for example, if you, I had a few Brazilians in my team, and they're a little bit blue people. So if you have a team, you have red, blue, and green people. It's like a triangle. Red people are more the leaders. Blue people are more the persons who invest a lot in friendship and in group relationships. And the green people are very analytical. So, but I didn't know the theory behind it. But I really had troubles with coping with the way I brought feedback to them, and also my interaction, my behavior in a team was very conflicting sometimes, because I was very proactive and I have a strong character, so I was defending a lot of ideas very hard. So they were more like I received a lot of feedback regarding that interaction and dynamic, and still it stays hard to cope with that. But it's a nice challenge now, and we have some tools and methods to cope with the cultural differences, because the last thing you want to do is that you want to kill their creative confidence by blowing their idea. It's all about enabling people. So I apply, for example, a lot of the power of silence. So in the first few weeks, I was the person who first shared his ideas and first shared his opinions. But now I wait until everyone has shared their thoughts and ideas. And if my idea or thought didn't pop up, I will share it to the group. But that's a new way for me to interact in a team. But it works far more effectively than my first approach, which was, just kicking in all those ideas and try to defend them and try to pursue my ideal situation. So that was quite an interesting transition for me.
We work with a model called the integrated model of group development, which shows how teams or groups develop as they go through their kind of time working together. And so a lot of the methods and methodology we teach and support the students to use is trying to support them to move through that model effectively. And it doesn't mean that you're not being yourself, but it does mean that you're trying to be very self-aware, so you understand how your behavior affects other people, how their behavior affects you, and how you understand how to work effectively together. And what Joel's describing there, that might have been that situation in that particular team, but maybe in a different team with a different group of people, he has to act and behave in a slightly different way in order for that team to be effective. So it's really about learning a lot about yourself from both being aware of what you do and other people supporting you to being aware of how your actions and behaviors affect other people. And that's what leads to kind of great stuff happening, hopefully.
That question is one for you, Max.
How do you embed theoretical knowledge with the daily practice at Hyper Island? Or do you think experience beats theory? No, not at all. I think it's a combination of both. So I would say that the difference in our learning style here compared to many environments is that we don't necessarily focus only, well, we don't at all only focus on the theory, but equally we don't only focus on experience. For me, it's very much about understanding the knowledge that's already out there, learning how to apply it or to use it, and then maybe trying to do it in a different way or a new way. So I think one of my biggest annoyances with creative spaces, like creative agencies, creative places, is that there's often a real focus on the big idea, and what's the big idea, and who's the person who just comes up with these big ideas. And they so often are not based on any research, any knowledge of what's gone before, there's a lack of process or approach to how to get to that. And it seems like there's just these people who come up with these ideas that are suddenly great, but often they don't know where they came from or how they got to them. And I think it's a risk to the industry, because you can't just keep selling ideas. You need to be able to sell things that have been validated, concepts or approaches or products or services that have a likelihood of succeeding or being successful. So what we try to focus on here is that you get some input and some knowledge and some understanding via industry coming in, via conducting your own research, via seeing what knowledge is already out there. And then you apply yourself to it. So you take all the best of those things you found, you take the context of what you're trying to work on, and you pull all of that together to develop some new knowledge, some new ways of thinking, and then you try it out and see what happens. And it's really that combination of both. And I think in traditional academia, there's far too much theory and not enough practice. But often in industry, there's far too much practice and not enough theory. So we're trying to find that middle ground between how do you use that knowledge and research and things that are already out there, but how do you also then do something with it rather than just theorizing about it more. So it's trying to find that balance for me.
I see a question of Nick. So the tools, the digital tools and gear we are using. I use, for example, Evernote, Sketch, Illustrator, InDesign. Especially Sketch is a program I really started using heavily the last couple of months. Because it's far more convenient than all the Adobe applications I have. Yeah, every person has his own digital tools.
I mean, I kind of touched on it earlier, but we really don't focus on teaching digital tools so much for exactly the reason you just said, because they change all the time. And that's this disruptive thing that digital brings, that it might be that everybody's coding in a certain language now, or everybody's using a certain software package to do something. But then this new thing comes out, or this new language comes out, this new way of doing things comes out, and then you have to learn that one. So what we focus much more on is that learning approach. How do you understand and how do you contextualize that stuff? And then how do you continue to learn it yourself? Because I think nearly all of those digital tools you can learn by yourself. From the million different tutorials there are on the web. We give students here access to lynda.com, which is a video tutorial website which has tutorials about all sorts of stuff. But what we're not going to do is spend kind of valuable class time, I suppose, sitting people down in rows and teaching them to code, or teaching them how to use Adobe Illustrator or things like that. This isn't a design course in that kind of technical way. This is much more about the thinking and the processes and the approaches that have stood the test of time, that continue to change and develop, but they develop at a much slower pace than the digital tools do.
Yeah.
And then it's more about the individual deciding, well, do I want to and do I need to know how to use that particular piece of software? And if so, then how do I have that self-discipline and that self-awareness to go out and do that myself, rather than wait for somebody to sit me down and teach me how to click each button and what it does.
Yeah, for example, I enrolled an online course for UX and UI design and on the next web. And I also watch a lot of tutorials from Sketch to work more efficiently in the program. So it's also, I think, it's also a responsibility of the team, because we have a few peer sharing sessions where people teach us how to write an academic paper, for example, but also we have some portfolio reviews where we just show our portfolio to each other and ask feedback. And there's also a coding peer sharing coming up. So we have that responsibility as team to also develop our hard skills, and I think every every individual here has a set of hard skill that is really useful for the team, and we try to motivate everyone to share those skills so we can all learn from that.
I think what we're not here, and what I hope we never will be, is a production factory. We're never going to create a course which just teaches people how to use bits of software and then throws them out into the world and expects them to succeed in a working environment. What we want is students to leave here having the critical thinking and the approaches and the processes and the experiences of how to get from a problem to a solution, how to get from a challenge to an idea, how to get from a brief to the execution of a product or a service. And it's about having that mindset and that approach and understanding technical things and digital things in that context. But it's much more about how you go about doing it rather than the technical aspects of it.
Yeah, it's I think about understanding the world and understanding the people and having empathy of for their individual needs, but also for the context they are living in. One of the best modules I've experienced and still thinking of oftenly is the module Understanding People, which was led by IDEO, and they really taught us to just get in the field and understand human behavior first before you think on any design. So yeah, I think hard skills are useful, but it's not. It's a little priority here in the course in general.
What kind of big skills gaps did you find? Is this? I'm guessing this is picking up on what I talked about earlier in terms of industry research that we've done. So I can answer it in that. Well, I can answer it from that perspective. So I think the two courses we run here, digital media management and digital experience design, are quite different. Digital media management is a very broad course, and we talk about these kind of T-shaped skills people. So they have a breadth of skills across lots of different areas, but they have a depth of skills in one particular area. And that's what the digital media management course was designed to do. Because it focuses on the kind of design side, it focuses on the digital technology side, it focuses on the business side, and it brings those three kind of disciplines together. And that came out of industry saying that they want people who aren't just describing themselves as a whatever. I'm a developer, I'm a designer, I'm a project manager, that they understand the whole process and understand how to work with different people who have different skill sets. And that's because industry was becoming very siloed. You'd see that all the developers knew how to work together and talk together, but the designers and the developers maybe weren't very good at clicking or communicating. So this course is designed to bridge that gap. So you don't have to know how to do everything, but you have a good understanding of each area so that when you're thinking about something you're designing or when you're thinking about something from a business perspective, you're thinking about every stage in that process of creating something. Digital experience design is kind of the opposite. It's quite a narrow T, so that there's not as wide a range of topics covered, but there's a greater depth towards experience design. And again, that was based on what industry has been telling us around that they want people they want experienced designers, but they don't really know exactly what skills they're expected to have. And this is why I think this course particularly is in such an interesting place at the moment, because it's a really emerging market. We see a lot of job roles for UX designers. We see a lot of job roles for UI or experience architects or service designers or whatever you want to call them, because there's so many different terms that fit under this kind of umbrella. But if you look at these job descriptions, they look like completely different people a lot of the time. Some of them are very technically focused, others are more research focused, others are very practical and about kind of going out and working with stakeholders. Others you might just sit by yourself on a computer all the time, testing buttons on websites. So I think the industry is still very unclear as to what this role is or what these roles are and what are the expected skills and experiences that come with this. And that makes it challenging because it's hard to design any kind of educational experience that meets that need. but it also makes it really exciting because it gives a lot of freedom to the students who are here and will be leaving us here to help kind of define what that role is, define what that type of job is, and to help shape and mold the industry rather than just slot into its pre-existing job roles.
And I see a new question from Robin. For what kind of programs do you design at this moment, and why do you? Okay, so currently we are designing the future of academic publishing. It is that's an interesting topic, and I think it's a topic we all have some relation with because we all did research and we all searched through this amazing, insanely awful search engines from academic publishers. Academic publishing is, in my belief, all about knowledge, sharing knowledge, enabling people to access knowledge, but also to connect knowledge and create impact. Because people are researching topics in order to create development in that area. I can give you a bit of our concept, what we are working on. We are focusing on connecting knowledge instead of connecting the academic publishers with the universities. And we try to do that with a Medium/LinkedIn combination that focuses on first-time authors and researchers, because we believe we can shape their behavior patterns instead of the old researchers who already are used by the closed academic publishing field. I think it's really important to work on this, work harder on this topic, because I think the current academic publishing industry is really closed and a bit evil. It's also owned by private private companies, so it's all about money as well. And I always believe that knowledge should be open in a way, in a realistic way, and because knowledge results in power, and it's important for our development in general. I can share afterwards some early designs of our solution to give you a bit of a picture, and I also can share some research and process pictures to give you a bit of a view in our process.
I think that gives you an idea of a live brief that we have here. I don't think I've mentioned properly really, but nearly all of the projects the students work on are centered around some kind of live brief from a real client that's created that brief and that's brought it in for the students to work on. And they can focus on a whole range of things. So if I think of the last few years, we've worked with a lot of big names, I suppose, like Greenpeace and Skype and Unilever and Metro newspaper and BBC and things like that. But then we've also worked with lots of other companies that aren't maybe these bigger global brands, such as more local companies, to the company Joëls talking about, which is Emerald Publishing. We've worked with City Football Group, who own Manchester City and various other football clubs. In HR, we work with local transport, so thinking about the transport network in Manchester or in cities in general. So it's really about having that mixture for me of both kind of bigger, more corporate type challenges, smaller, more local things, things that are more digital and kind of future thinking, things that are very conceptual, things that are focused more on social good and creating a better world, really. And it's about that variety of context to apply this to, because really the process that Joël and the other students go through is kind of similar for each thing. It's taking a problem or a challenge and trying to create something from it, whether it's a solution, whether it's a report, whether it's some concepts, whether it's a prototype. But I think it's learning how to do that in lots of different contexts is very important, because if you go off to work in industry, and let's say you're working in an agency environment where you've got lots of different clients, then they're all going to be different. You're going to be working with different user groups or different target markets, different markets, whether they're local or national or global or you know, European or global, working with different timescales and budgets and a whole other range of variables that you need to be able to fit into. So it's about having that wide variety of experiences to apply the learning and the knowledge and the approach to, which then hopefully means that students leave here much more well-rounded, and they're not just talking about, oh, I've worked on this brief for Nike or this brief for Adidas or things like that, but they're talking about, I've worked on this brief which was focused on this market and this type of user segment, but I worked on this one which was more local and this which is more global. And it's about engaging with those different kind of stakeholders and different types of challenges to create a better overall learning experience.
Okay, I think we're heading towards the end of the Q&A. Dave, I can give you a small tour through the studio. I think, yeah, Max, you're leaving.
Yeah, I'm going to go do some work. Just to answer Robin's quick question, he just posted the kind of tools to unleash creativity. I mean, there's a million of them, and a lot of them are out on the web. But one place you might want to check out is called the Hyper Island Toolbox. So if you Google Hyper Island Toolbox, you'll find. I'm sure Joel can share the link later.
Yeah.
You'll find there's lots of the stuff we use here day to day. It's all open source on there, and you can see how to use them and what context they're relevant for. And we don't create all of this stuff. Some of it we do create. Other things we take from other places and reference and source it. I think we're pretty open about our methods here. It's not a kind of a secret club, or you have to kind of learn certain ways of doing things. I think what's different about Hyper Island is how we apply it compared to many other places. So yeah, that's a good resource you can look at, and yeah, Google stuff like that, and you'll probably find lots of other things as well.
Especially check the energizers, are really nice.
Yeah, yeah, and if you Google Go Bananas Stockholm, you'll probably find some interesting groups of students in Stockholm doing some things that might look a bit weird, but do have a purpose and a place in creating effective teams. Cool. Well, thanks guys for your time today. Really nice to have a chance to chat to you and to hear your questions. I'm very happy for Joel to share my contact details as well with you if you want to follow up with me directly as well. Yeah, I'm more than happy to talk more and explain a bit about what we do or answer any questions you might have about our courses. But otherwise, I'll leave you in Joel's capable hands to have a look around this crazy creative space.
Oh yeah, it will be crazy. Davey, can you call me back, because then I will answer on my phone. That's a bit easier than my MacBook.
Oh, and what we'd like from feedback from you? Yeah, well, I would love some feedback personally as to what you took from this talk. What were your kind of what are the things that you found interesting, or the learnings? And then probably some feedback on the format as well. Could this have been done in a slightly different way, which might have made the understanding of what we're talking about more effective? So yeah, any feedback on those things, I'd love you to share them with Joel so we can talk about them afterwards.
Yep.
Right, have a great weekend, guys, and yeah, hope to hear from some of you soon.
Okay, Dave, you call me.